To see what's going on. Birds have killed everyone in town, but you hear some chirping upstairs. Let me check that out. So you're shooting that, and what did Hitchcock tell you about that scene?
Well, first of all, at the very beginning, when I first read the script and knew that they were going to be using ravens and gulls, and I said, "And Mr. Hitchcock, how would we be doing that scene at the end where I go up those stairs and open the door and all these birds attack me?" And he thought for a moment, and he said, "Well, we'll be using the mechanical birds like we do with the children." And I had also asked him, why would I go up there by myself? And he had to think a lot longer on that one. And he said, "Because I tell you to." Okay.
So the time comes to shoot that, and what happens?
Well, I was told that they would use mechanical birds for that shoot. And that scene wasn't on the schedule until very late in the shooting schedule. And was to start on Monday. And I was in my dressing room on the set, and Jim Brown, the assistant director, came into my dressing room. And he couldn't look at me. He looked at the floor and the walls and the ceiling, and I'm thinking, "What's up, Jim?" And he said, "The mechanical birds don't work, we have to use real ones," and out the door he said. And I picked my jaw off the floor, and I went out to the set, and they had no intentions of using mechanical birds. There wasn't a mechanical bird in sight. And
So you don't believe that story for half a second? That they weren't working?
no.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, not for a second. And they had built a cage around the door that I come in, and it had a top on it, and so that the birds wouldn't be up in the rafters once they were hurled at me. And there were 3 or 4 cartons of, cartons that high, of raven and gull and a few pigeons thrown in, which they sailed at me for 5 days.
Literally threw at you. Yeah. And in case they didn't make solid enough contact with you and your face, they tied some to you, correct?
Yes, they did. By Friday, of course, I was on the floor against the door. She laughs. Thank you. That was terrible.
Friday, she was on the floor. It's hilarious.
So on Wednesday, Cary Grant came onto the set, and he came over to me, and he told me how brave I was. I was the bravest lady he'd ever met. I said, "I don't think that's quite the right adjective for it." Anyway, before they laid me down on the floor, Rita Riggs, my dresser, put bands around my body with elastics, 2 elastics, in bunches, and then I put the dress on, and she pulled the elastics through the tears in the dress. And so then they put the birds and tied the birds very loosely around, around their little feet. And so they'd stay on my body. Isn't it gruesome? It really is. It's just gruesome. And about 3 in the afternoon on Friday, now this all started on Monday. And Hitchcock couldn't come out of his office on the set until we were actually ready to, he was ready to say, begin. Let's begin.
Did he say action, or he said begin?
He said, anything that we would all understand.
Mm-hmm.
And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one of the birds jumped from my shoulder onto my face and got way too close to my eye, and it was bleeding, and I just got the birds off of me and just sat and I just cried from sheer exhaustion. And I took care of Melanie. It was the nanny's weekend off, and I took care of Melanie that weekend. And I don't remember driving to the studio Monday morning. I laid down on my beautiful French chaise and fell asleep. And my hairdresser came in, and she couldn't wake me. My makeup man came in, he couldn't wake me. Nobody could wake me, and when I did wake up, I was in my own bed. I was so exhausted, just exhausted. And the doctor told Hitch that I had to have a week's rest because I was totally exhausted. And Hitch said, well, she can't. We have nothing else to shoot, but, you know. And if you look at the film, there aren't too many scenes I'm not in. And the doctor said,